welcome everybody to the Luxury Presence panel. My name is Chris Linsell. I'm the Director of Content here at Luxury Presence, and I am so excited to bring you a fantastic, provocative, maybe unexpected conversation with one of real estate's leading voices when it comes to providing a luxury experience. My guest today is the one, the only Ricardo Rodriguez. I would say, Ricardo, I'm not trying to blow smoke at you here, but you are
No, go ahead, do it.
genuinely you're
I live for it. That's an easy way to get to my heart. Just
you are genuinely one of the agents I can count on one hand. I mean, maybe just three fingers on the eastern seaboard of the United States who has the reach and the influence and the experience that you do. And I'm so excited to talk to you today about who you are, what you do, and to dig into our topic, luxury. It's not just it's not a price point. It's an experience. It
yes.
is it is more than just the price tag on the sign rider. It is much more than that. We're going to go
Mhm.
deep on this topic. We want to provide actionable insights and takeaways for our audience. Audience, welcome. We have over 400 of you piling into the room here. We're so grateful to have you here. This is an interactive experience. We want your questions. Please use the Q&A function in this Zoom room to give your questions to me. I will try to lace them into the conversation where I can. And if I can't, we'll have a Q&A period at the end of this conversation where we'll be able to go rapid fire with Ricardo and answer some of the things that you want to know about. Ricardo, we're not the only ones on the screen here. I also want to introduce Laura McDonald. She is one of our amazing leaders here at Luxury Presence. Laura is going to pop in towards the end of the presentation and share a little bit about how folks who are attending today can get some of the tools that Ricardo and his team use to power their real estate business, and talk a little bit about how Luxury Presence partners with agents just like every one of you to get the business that they want. Laura, you want to just say hi, give folks a little hello, let us hear your voice here.
I do. Thanks, Chris. And Ricardo, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you and to
Oh,
hear what you have to say. My name is Laura McDonald. I've been at Luxury Presence for almost 4 years. I work on the sales team. So if after this call you want to schedule some time to meet with me and my team, we will give you a calendar link to do so. I am reporting live from Lake Tahoe in northern Nevada. So I saw that someone here is from Reno and another person said Reno, Tahoe. So hello. And I'm from New York originally, lived in LA for a long time, and now up here hiding in the mountains. Thanks
Here
for
she
having
is.
smart woman.
me. Yeah.
Ricardo, let's bust right into it. I know
Yeah, let's do this.
there are a lot of folks who are interested in hearing what you have to say today, but before we get in there, for anybody who's been living under a rock or maybe is lost in the California sunshine and isn't as familiar with you and the work that you do, can you give us a brief introduction? Tell us who you are, what you do, and the markets that you serve.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see so many people. This is very, very exciting. It should be a very nice conversation, particularly because Chris knows how to ask questions. And so looking forward to that part. As Chris mentioned, I'm on the East Coast of the United States. I'm in Boston. My name is Ricardo Rodriguez. I am with Coldwell Banker. I've been with the company now for 20 years, which is the entirety of my career. I do have a team that is a New England-based team, so we pretty much cover coastal New England. So from that big picture from Kennebunkport, Maine, all the way to Newport, Rhode Island, and then in terms of urban centers, we work primarily in Providence and in Boston, which is the majority of my business lands. And so we have a nice geographic area that makes sense to our clients. That's where our clients kind of like live and operate. They have a home in Boston, and then they have a second home in Kennebunkport. They have a third home in Newport, and so that's really kind of like the rationale behind that specific structure. It's 16 agents. Yeah, 16. I should know the count, right? 16 agents, and we're very fortunate to be represented as the number one team, large team in New England for the company. And so again, great set of agents, incredible expertise, and most importantly, we have an incredible set of clients that support all of our craziness and all of our efforts. And so that in a nutshell is it's who I am and what my business looks like.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, but I will say I think you were a little light in describing the fact that one of the reasons why your team is the number one large team in all of New England. Is that
Yes,
right?
it's in
I mean,
New
it's
England
not
region.
just Boston, it's the entire
Yeah,
region.
the region, yes.
One of the reasons why your team has achieved this status and this performance level is your attention to what can nakedly be called
Mhm.
the customer experience. It's not just customer, it's like a partnership
Yes.
experience. And I have since the moment I've met you, I mean over a year ago now, I've always been fascinated with your dedication to providing this level of incredible service to anybody that your team works with. And that's where I really want to bust in here. You've said that one of your defining characteristics as a professional and as a team leader here is your ability to define who your core client is, define who these
Yes.
people are and what's important to them.
Yes.
How do you go about identifying your core client and what does that process look like for you and your team?
So yes, I do think that that to me has been the most important part of defining my business for the past 20 years. And it was an effort that I started very early on. It's something that I understood very early on was very important because I started in the business, again, this is my 20th year. I joined a real estate Coldwell Banker in December of 2005. So literally this month is. Mind you, I didn't start working on 2006. By 2007, we know what happened. The market started going upside down by 2008. It was a disaster. And so I never had a love of like a honeymoon with real estate. I started real estate also because I needed it. And I told this before, I was broke. I was literally counting quarters to pay for eggs or for a can of tuna to eat. Thank God I have family members that were paying my rent, and so I entered real estate hungry in more than one way, and I needed to make sure that real estate worked for me. And then I literally found myself in one of the worst market conditions that you could ever find. But that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my business because I was pushed to be resourceful and I was pushed to understand what my place in the business was. And I always understood from that moment on that really my business, like you said, Chris, had to be defined by who my client is and that core part of my client is. And so not that we only work with specific people, not that we only work in a specific price point. Certainly, we work in every price point that everybody comes to the table, everybody's welcome. But ultimately, there is a core of clients that are the ones that if you tap into those are the ones that are going to be your biggest advocates and are the ones that are going to build that business for you. So piggyback into that and really create an entire infrastructure to keep that core of clients at the center of your entire business universe has been life changing. And it
Mm,
really started for me in identifying where my strengths were and where my point of differentiation is. I think that we talk about business, often about, value proposition, and I understood without having a definition of what it was that I needed to develop a value, that value proposition. But the value proposition I discovered had nothing to do with a set of tools. It's not the things that I did. That's not why the clients were hiring me. They were not hiring me because I had this, and that. And even now, they're not hiring me because I have whatever list of goodies I can provide. They're hiring me because of my point of view. They're hiring because of my lens. They're hiring me because the way in which I look at the business that is unique and it connects with what they do. And I think that really has been that differentiation for me. And so it
mm,
comes from understanding who my client is. It helps define what that point of view is going to be. And it is
mm,
a point of view that is very organic to me. And so in my case, for example, has always been about kind of like the experience, the visual experience, the consistency on the service, the attention to detail. That really is that I have been always about, even from the first day in the business. It's always been about that creativity, but not creativity as let's just build new things, but creativity as a way of creating leverage. Creativity as a way of overcoming obstacles, as a way of like learning from past experience and created something that is new and that is exciting. And so really that has been, I think, the principle of what I have done as an individual agent, but also has been a principle of of what we have right now as a team, is understanding who our client is, where the client is coming from, and then becoming, and you heard me say this before, Chris, becoming proficient in that language, in the
Mhm.
language of the client that allows you to define how you provide that service. So we are very client centric. Our service doesn't start from us and what we think it should be and it should look like, and whatever market's telling us or the business is telling us. It really is, it's very closely related to who the client is, who our core clients are, and what they want.
Now, I think it's interesting. One of the things that I heard you say as you're explaining that is how important your point of view, your perspective, and your experience
Yes.
are
Yeah.
to providing that fantastic experience for clients because it's vital. If you don't share your value and perspective, if you don't demonstrate why your experience and point of view is valuable to those clients,
Absolutely.
they may like you as a person, but they may not find as much value in the things that you're
Yes.
providing. Is that, I mean, would you say
Absolutely.
it's fair to
Yeah,
say?
no, absolutely. Let's be honest. There's how many of us in this conversation right now? 500 or 100 people in this conversation. We have access to the same set of tools. So whatever I bring to the table for my clients, unless I have something extraordinary that, I'm inventing something nobody has ever seen, really we're utilizing the same set of tools. So the client is not paying me for my tools. The client
Mhm.
is paying me for the way in which I see those tools, utilized, for my lens. I always say that, for my point of view on how we're going to be conducting the business. That is the difference. I'll give you an example. I have these clients. The name of the company is New Boston Ventures. That there's big developers here out of Boston. They are the first people who gave me a chance to a project 20 years or so ago. When we go right now into meetings and we meet with their architects and we meet with their interior designers, their landscape architects, even when we meet with their legal teams, the first thing that they say to the entire teams is, whatever Ricardo wants and whatever he likes is what we should do. And so
Mm.
if that doesn't speak to the value of having a point of view and the value of having a lens as to how that business needs to be done, I cannot give you a better example of that. And so, yes, the tools are there. And as we have more resources, the tools become more complex. And as technology comes across, the tools become more sophisticated and all those things are there. But ultimately, they are just that. They are just tools. What makes the difference is that, and I'm sounding repetitive, but really what makes the difference is that point of view. And that's the connection.
Mm.
Is how a new agent can break into the market, is because of that ability to kind of like articulate that specific point of view and create that connection. And it's how businesses grow, is from continuing to changing that articulation of of that point of view. And that truly is your value proposition. That truly is your value proposition. Your value proposition is how you see the world and how you see real estate and how you see that being operationalized.
Now, I want to hammer on this just a little bit because this morning I don't know if anybody read Inman this morning, but there was an article um, about a consumer to consumer platform called Ridley that's coming out that essentially um, takes the real estate agent out of the equation for a number of different in a number of different scenarios. And the founder of this company has said the reason why this platform is getting traction is a lot of real estate professionals don't demonstrate their value to their clients. And I think that this is a symptom of what you and I have talked about before, which is this two-tiered service problem. Your
Yes.
VIPs get this magical experience, but
Yes.
everybody else gets a checklist, essentially.
Yes. Yes.
Um, from your vantage point, can you talk a little bit about this problem, both in our industry and how you have addressed it a little bit in your business and on your team? How do you get to break through that wall of this two-tier service problem?
Listen, I think again it goes back to that, to your positioning within the market, right? And so I would say this to you. I've always been a luxury agent, even when I didn't have anything, any listings or any business that resemble luxury or a price point that was defined as luxury. But I've always defined myself as a luxury agent. And I define myself not as saying I am, but I operate as a luxury agent. Everything that I
Mhm.
do, the presentation, the systems, all the stuff that has been created around that I've created around me for my business has been created from the point of view of being a luxury agent. And now that I've had a team, which has been in place now for 10 years, we are a luxury team, not because all we sell are expensive things, because you sometimes can get lucky and have one transaction and then that's it, right? One big transaction of a big number, and then that's it. But because we have created entire systems and operations and we have created an entire culture that allow us to embrace luxury not as a price point, as you mentioned earlier, Chris, but as an experience. Because ultimately, luxury is experiential, and I think that that is the difference, right? I
Mhm.
think that sometimes what happens with us is that we wait for the as an agent, right? And I work with a lot of agents throughout the years in my team, and I know that a lot of agents wait for the big number to come in to start honing their luxury skills, but that point is too late. And so I always say to people, start honing your skills in luxury so that you're not just reacting to the business, but you are actually being proactive. And so when that business comes in, because it comes at some point, you have the opportunity and the ability to continue to grow, and that you have the systems that are in place. And so again, we're not a luxury team. I'm not a luxury agent just because I deal with expensive properties or important clients or whatever it is because because we are high touch, right? Because we create memorable experiences, because the systems that we are creating are repeatable systems, and so that all agents in the team can replicate that same experience. And so
Mhm.
that is really that type of consistency is what makes us a luxury team, because the experience is consistent regardless of that price point. Whether we're working with somebody who's an entry-level person on their first rental ever, right? Or we are working with somebody who's buying their 20th luxury home or the biggest home in the neighborhood, the experience is the same one. I was very fortunate this year. I went to this, and I think I mentioned this to you, Chris. I went with a friend to the Fashion Week in Milan, and I went in Paris. And I went to, a couple of the shows, went to the Bottega Veneta show, and I went to the Louis Vuitton show. And the two shows couldn't have been more different. The two visual elements couldn't have been more different. The two settings obviously could not be are not much more different. But the experience between two houses that are completely different from each other was so consistent. And it was all directed towards my experience. Certainly, they were very interested in my friends because obviously they're clients, they're people that they love and that they respect. So a lot of the experience with it. But I was not left behind. I was literally a newcomer to the whole thing. And I was treated with the same level of experience than these top clients did. And to me, that was such a lesson, and to me, it was such a reassurance that what I have defined as my service provision as a luxury agent, as a luxury team, is right on point, because it was about that experience. It didn't matter that they just met me; they were providing me with exactly the same service, but again, in two different cities, by two different companies, in two different kind of like contexts, and it was just a very, very beautiful experience to be a part of, because it was
Mhm.
really really reassuring that again, luxury is about that. Luxury is about how you make people feel. And it's not about how much they're spending or how much money they have or how expensive the home is. And so that to me was pretty wonderful to feel reassured by that. by that.
So, so I want to bust into now a couple of the strategies that you and your team use to create this luxury experience, and I want to encourage folks listen to these ideas, ask some questions, maybe borrow these approaches. There's a lot of good stuff in here. The first thing that jumps to mind that you told me about when we were chatting about this before
What did I tell you,
is
Chris? Now I'm nervous. What did I say?
the first thing that you mentioned is that your listing presentations, you don't actually do a listing presentation during that conversation. This seems
Yeah.
pretty counterintuitive for folks. Explain to us how do you do a listing presentation without actually doing a listing presentation?
So, so again, I have learned to kind of like evolve on my operation. And so something that I've learned is that in order for me to grow in any market segment, but particularly again, I see the luxury market segment for me as the baseline because everything that I learned from that market segment, I can apply to every other market segment because that is a very, very hard market segment to break into or to maintain. And so any lesson that I learn from that, I can apply to my entire operation, right? It's almost kind of like a top-down approach in terms of those lessons learned. And something that I've learned from my work in the luxury market segment and with those clients in particular is that I had to learn to be proficient in their language, in what was their definition of luxury. As we said, luxury is experiential, and which means that people perceive it differently. I always say, and I've said this to you, Chris, in Boston, I don't have to learn about cars because we people really don't drive, but I have to learn about, let's say, um, philanthropy because people are super philanthropic, right? And I have to learn about art because people, in that specific segment of clients, people are very inclined towards art collections. And so those are certain proficiencies that I have to literally learn. And so there are some things that I do not worry about in terms of learning that are part of that vernacular of luxury, but there are some things in which for me are really important. And I realized through that process that the most important thing that I could do is connect in those elements with those specific clients. And so when I was doing listing presentations in particular, the listing presentation in itself, I discovered to be a hindrance because you're now worrying about turning the page or the slide or whatever it is. And so something that I started implementing is we send the listing presentation ahead of time. So it arrives a day before. We also have learned to adjust with the time. So we don't do a physical paper listing presentation anymore. We send it on an iPad, which the client can keep, or we send it on a Kindle, depending, I mean, it's based on price points, right? But we deliver the presentation with an introductory video, for example, and so that they can watch it before we get there. But when we go to the actual meeting with the actual presentation, all I do is not only answer questions, but what I do is I spend that time to create that connection and to speak about those things that I am being told are important to them. And so if I'm doing this tour of their house and they're talking about their art collection, I'm going to spend my time talking about their art collection and not about, let's turn the page and let me tell you that I'm going to postcards and I'm going to create a booklet and I'm going to do a video because that's already been done. They
Mhm.
already know I'm going to be doing those things. And so again, understanding that language, that vernacular of my client and opening up the time during that listing presentation period just to have that connection has been a very important change on my ability to really not only connect, but also kind of like capture that business.
Now, you also mentioned during our conversations this level of experience and connection and attention to clients extends beyond the listing appointment into when you've got actual clients. You mentioned to me
Yes.
when you are working with buyers,
Mm.
you'll often hire a driver so that you can
Yes.
be present in the vehicle, not distracted. The phone stays in your pocket. Tell us a little bit more about this because I think, for a lot of us,
Yeah.
we think about this sort of elevated level of service, but we don't necessarily execute it. Hiring a driver for a couple hours is
No,
not a budget breaker, but it really does provide an extraordinary level of service and care for clients.
yeah, so again, go back again. I just go back to the basic that again, we get the business because of that point of view, right? We get the business because the way that we look at it. We get the business because of our ability to connect. So as I said earlier when we were talking about the listing presentation, to me, to free up time to connect is the most important thing. That's the money maker, is that free time to connect. And so you mentioned it. For example, if I'm with a buyer, you will never see my phone. My phone is in my pocket. They will never see me grabbing the phone unless there's something that I know is urgent, personal, or the world is gonna end, and I'll let them know, hey, I might have to take this one call. I'll let you know. For the most part, they will never see the phone because I do think that shows not only respect, but it also shows that you are paying attention to everything that they're saying. And you also have the capacity to pay attention to exactly that. They're giving you the cues as to what they want, what they don't want, all those things that happen during a lot of those showings. And so certainly that is an important part. Another thing that we have done, and you mentioned it, is that we have established relationships with certain people in the community that drive cars. And so when we have clients, it's also a way of saving some time, because if you are familiar with Boston, to show 5 properties in Boston, it could take you 3 hours. By the time that you drive, go around trying to find a parking space, get a ticket anyway, run in and out. Now you're pissed. Now you don't know where you are. All this. You're fighting with people. So in order to really kind of expedite that process for the client, instead of telling, hey, you need to now give me 4 hours, we could tell this person, you're going to give me half, you're going to give me 2 hours. We're being more respectful of their time, which is part of that experience. But also, I am now free, phone in my pocket, to really have the conversations that I need to be having. Conversations that might be about the neighborhood, history, but also trying to understand where they're coming from. Because remember that ultimately, real estate is not always about that square footage, right? Really, real estate really is about how people live. And so understanding how people live, what is important for them in their lives, is an important part of that matchmaking that we do. And I am not going to have that opportunity if I am burned by other things. And so I made that decision. It's a strategic business decision to go in that direction, because that is again enhancing my ability to have those conversations.
Hmm. Now, I want to give a quick shout out uh, to uh, to you and certainly to your team for creating that same consistent experience that you just
Yes.
described, not just across the in-person interactions that you have with your clients, but it's present in your media as well. I'm going to drop in the chat a link to your Instagram, and
Okay.
I hope everybody goes and follows Ricardo because it's just aesthetically a really beautiful feed, and there's really fun stuff to see. But it's also a chance for anybody who is consuming the content that you create to understand who your team is, the sort of work that you do, but also to get a sense of who you are as a person as well. Um, I would love to hear. Oh, and by the way, anybody here, feel free to drop your Instagrams in the chat here. This is a great chance to network and to follow each other, interact with each other, see what other folks in other parts of the country are doing. This is really valuable. But definitely check out Ricardo's media and content. One of the things that I think is really interesting, as you look at your Instagram and the media and the content that your team create, is you are describing and creating opportunities for folks to interact and to connect, to ask questions. It's very clear that there is a consistent playbook that is in place for you and your team to get the word out about
Mhm.
the things that you're doing and the things that are important to you. I think that there is a misconception in our industry that anybody who is running a playbook is not being creative, is not being bespoke and
Yeah.
personalized, that it's one or the other. But it's pretty clear that is not the case. Talk to us a little bit about how you use systems and playbooks, these repeatable processes, and how
Yes.
you don't feel limited by them. How do you take those and still create personalized magical experiences?
Listen, you need systems in order to operate. Again, even when I was a single agent, I had systems that made sense, for the operation at that point, right? Certain things that make sense. Obviously, there are everybody in this room most likely is at different places in their business, but it doesn't excuse not to have the necessary systems that need to be there. Sometimes they don't have to be complicated and cumbersome and expensive. I think I told you, Chris, years ago, I couldn't afford, for example, a website. I really couldn't afford a website. So I went and I built a website myself, right? It was the most basic website, but it looked like me and it spoke of as to what I was doing. And so there is all this level of resourcefulness that sometimes is necessary to create those systems, but the systems need to be there. CRMs, we could go crazy with CRMs and pay tens of thousands of dollars, a month on a CRM, but sometimes a spreadsheet is all you need as long as that spreadsheet is run properly. And so systems are really important because the systems keep the operation going. Without systems, you're going to have inconsistencies, right? And so the consistency is only going to come from that system being in place. And everything else, all that time that is open from having those systems in place is the time that you use for that creativity, right? Is the time that you use, again, not for creativity for the sake of creating pretty things, but I'm talking about creativity as leverage. And I think I said it before, using creativity as a way of turning around the business and getting more business if necessary, or pivoting as you need. But you're not going to be able to do that if you don't have those systems in place. And again, the question of systems also varies, as I said earlier, from agent to agent. Now, as 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 uh, as the business grows and in my own experience with the team, and as I went from one agent to two to five to seven, now to how many, 16 or 17. I'll have to ask Bethany, my team, how many, 16 or 17 agents of us at this point. Those systems are really important because what the systems do is the systems create that consistency on the service provision. And so for me, as somebody who's looking at the business of the team from above, I'm able to really focus on the things that are around culture and around service delivery. And so that consistency is in place. As I mentioned, I have this team not because I want to have an additional 17 friends, which is fantastic, but I have this team because my clients are moving in that geographic area. And so I need my clients to feel that when they're working with me or I pass them along to Laura Kotick, who is in New Hampshire, or I pass them to Bethany Eddy, who is in Rhode Island, wherever the agents are, that the service provision is consistent, is the same. They don't feel it. Is a different, it's obviously a different person, but the service provision is exactly the same service provision. There is no ups and downs on what we are doing. And so
Mm.
setting up that baseline is super, super important. And I think I mentioned to you, Chris, years ago, I invested on hiring somebody to come into the team and do and it was a 4-part series. It's an etiquette class series, 4 parts, business etiquette. And so she helped us create an entire baseline as to how do we operate from the business perspective, from that etiquette point of view. How do you write a note? When do you send a note? How do you respond to an email? When do you respond to an email? How do you say hello? How do you answer your phone calls? All those little things that sometimes we take for granted, we be able to even standardize. So the entire operation that I have right now with the team is standardized. It's standardized as a luxury team, and it's standardized for all the agents, which means the service provision is standardized for all our clients. And it has been a really, really good strategy from that point, from that point
Mm.
of.
I want to do a couple of rapid fire questions with you, but before we
Oh,
do, I want to get your take on one other thing, which is an
mhm.
important element, I think maybe an overlooked element to this idea of providing the luxury experience. You said something, and I've heard you say this on stage as well, and you get kind of a provocative response from it. You have this position that your colleagues are also your clients.
Yes,
And if you are not treating your colleagues or thinking about your colleagues as your clients, you're falling behind. Can you explain a little
absolutely.
bit about what you mean by this?
Listen, anybody who's outside of your circle is potentially your client. right? So it's not just the people that you know are going to sell, or it's not that your buddies from college or the people at the coffee shop. It's everybody that you have an interaction with that potentially can bring a piece of business to you is potentially a client. And so your operation has to be set up for that purpose. And so for me, colleagues are my colleagues, even in the city, outside the city, internationally, are part of that network of clients. Years ago, listen, I had been in the business maybe for a couple of years. So this is like around 18 years ago. Back in the day, we didn't have, individuals, teams, or stuff. They were just like the top 50. And so Coldwell Banker will publish every year the top 50 people. And so on my second year again, I had no money, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to this bar that I know. I'm going to see if they'll cut me a deal. And so what I did is I invited those top 50 agents to come and have a drink. And they came in that first year and I celebrated them. I congratulated them. They didn't know who even I was, but I introduced myself. Fantastic. I want to be you in the next few years. Congratulations, all this stuff. And those agents became very early on a source of referrals. These are agents in the region that maybe didn't want to come to Boston. They don't want to do that piece of business. They are too busy. Maybe they want to go on vacation, but they want to take care, they want that client to be taken care of. Those agents very early on became a source of referrals for me. And so I've always understood since then that my colleagues, everybody who's in this room right now, are part of that network of clients.
Mm.
And so if I'm treating you the way in which I treat everybody else, right? If the experience that you're getting from me is a consistent experience, that is a luxury experience, I know that when an opportunity comes, most likely you're going to think of me. Whether you give it to me or not, that's a different thing. But whether you're
Mm.
going to think of me, you are going to think of me. And that
Mm.
is an important part of that strategy as well. And it works. In markets like this, like right now, this current markets in which a lot of our clients are not necessarily selling or buying because they're comfortable where they are. The business has to come from somewhere. And I could tell you that this year in particular, I have seen such an uptick of business coming in from those referrals from other colleagues. But it
Mm.
has been 18 years, 20 years of working into it to get to the point in which I could tell you that I can count that referral business that I'm getting from my colleagues again throughout the world as an important part of my revenue and as an important part of my business.
You're transitioning me perfectly. Here's a couple of rapid fire questions. I've been seeing this pop through the chat a little bit. Let's get some quick takes from you. Apart from referrals, which you just talked about,
Yes.
what's a lead source right now that you and your team are cashing in on? Where are you getting
Social
clients and
media.
business from?
Social
Social
media.
media.
Social media is incredible, particularly for luxury. Like we're getting a lot of luxury business out of social media, and particularly of Instagram, which makes sense because Instagram, it's so visual, right? So it kind of like makes sense. And just think of this, it used to be that our clients or people used to look for a website. Now people, the first thing that they ask is what's your handle? And so they'll go first into your Instagram, then they'll go into your website, they'll still go into your website, they'll still all those things. But your Instagram account, your social media is that super important component. And so social media. I think I mentioned it to you. We consistently have been getting 100 million plus worth of leads out of Instagram alone, pretty much this year. And so it is a very, very big good source of leads. A really,
Tell
really
us tell us a mistake that agents make on Instagram. What are they doing wrong that is resulting in low interaction, yeah, no interest? What can we fix in
listen.
order
I
to get ourselves on that path?
I, I'm keeping general, and it alludes to what I said earlier. I think something that we all do wrong is not speaking to our audience and not knowing who our audience is. You need to speak to your audience. Who is that pays attention to you, and then you create message for those people. Everybody else, it doesn't really matter whether they like it or not. It doesn't matter. Again, social media should be used not as a tool for popularity, it's as a business tool. And so as a business tool, and listen, it's okay. I want to get 100 million likes every time that I post something. I might not, but if I get the right people to like that and to remember that post, just earlier this year, we got a call from this person who gave us a $25 million portfolio worth of properties because she saw a video a year ago, a video that we posted a year ago. I don't even remember what video it was, and I forgot about it, but she somehow saw it. It connected to her. she must have saved it because a year later, I guess she called and she told us, I have this $25 million portfolio of real estate for you. And so, yes, I speak to my audience. That's what it is. And I think that that's the biggest mistake, that
Mm,
we have to go for likes or for popularity. And really, it should be out of a message that is specific to who your client is. And obviously, a message that is about you, that, connects you to them,
mm,
And it's that perfect mix of telling, of course, your real estate story to demonstrating your expertise, but also telling your own story, your origin story, who you are, where you come from. All those things are an important part of that messaging.
mm. Okay, one more rapid fire question before we jump back to the Q&A and taking some more questions from the audience. Tell us a little bit about a mistake that you've made. Tell us about a lesson that you've learned. You're at the top of your game. You are leading an entire segment of the country, but you're a human with a significant
So
track
many
record.
mistakes, Chris. Come on, we need like another hour for that.
Help us learn the easy way from something that you did. What was a mistake that you made that you learned a lesson from that we can learn from?
I think a mistake that I made several times until I learned it was to think that I had all the answers and to think that I knew what I was doing. And something that I have learned since I acknowledged that is that this, like, being part of these conversations, listening to people give you their first, their best practices is the most important thing that I can do as an agent. That yes, my answers and my experience are of course very important, but there is something that comes from the collaborative nature of this business, from listening to what other people are doing and from learning what other people are doing. And so yes, I think being a little bit too stubborn, and the hard-headed Colombian comes out, but I think I have learned to really take into consideration opinions and that other people bring to the table, because that's super important for growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, I'm so glad to be seeing the Q&A and the chat going crazy here. We want to get to a lot of these questions. Before we jump into your questions, Laura, I want to turn you to you here in this conversation. You've had the opportunity of leading countless number of real estate professionals to a place where they have digital tools to position them for the sort of growth that Ricardo and his team have realized over the last couple of decades of hard work. Can you tell us a little bit about what Luxury Presence does to support agents who are ready to make those kinds of leaps?
Yes, yes, I sure can. Thank you, Ricardo. You're so fun to listen to, and
Thank
I
you.
just love your energy. I think there are a few things that you've been talking about throughout this conversation that are really sticking out to me. The first of which, my favorite line is, I've been a luxury agent since before I sold my first house. Like that is such a, to me, such a clear statement of not only that how Ricardo had seen himself, but also the experience that he was planning and choosing to give to his clients before he had those clients and before he built the network and the team and everything that he has built in 20 years. He started from not having clients, from just having a desire to help people. And I think that that's something that's really helpful when you're talking about potentially working with us or other kind of marketing services that you're using in your real estate career is really like, how do you define yourself? And when you define yourself, how do you tell people what that is, right? Ricardo keeps talking about, how do you talk to your audience? Who is your audience? How do we share that story? And so when clients are choosing to work with us and to help kind of build their brand and their story, to us, everything that we build for clients is built off of having a website, right? Ricardo's been a website client of ours for a while. And he did mention that at the beginning, when he had no money, he just kind of built a landing page on, I'm assuming, like a Squarespace or a Wix. And then when he had the ability, he created a website with us. We have people all the time who are brand new agents who are like, is it too soon for me to make a website? And obviously, you have to think about finances. This is a really expensive career to get into. But to me, that is exactly when you should start. I always think like having a website and having an online presence is like your flagship store, right? It's like if you want to compete with someone who's been doing this for 20 years, you need to tell the story that you want your clients to hear. So if you're like, I am in, and I'll use my own example, right? I live in a small mountain town in Lake Tahoe, right? It's a very high-end community that I live in. If I want to compete with people that have been in this community for 20 years, I need to tell them that I am worth their time, right? I need to have a presence online that says, I haven't been doing this as long, but I can compete because I know the story that I'm trying to tell. I am a luxury agent in this market. And it doesn't have to be luxury, right? We know we work with clients in all 50 states. So what is luxury is a completely wide range of price points. But the biggest thing is luxury is always an experience, right? Am I going to take care of my clients? Am I going to prepare presentations before I even go see them? Am I going to have like a timeline in place of when I'm reaching out to my clients? Do I know that 3 hours after every time I meet with a new client, I'm going to send them a text and an email? Can I give them this experience of guiding them through the biggest decision that they are ever going to make in their life financially in the best way possible? And can I present a business online, right? When we get into real estate, you are an individual agent running around doing open houses and talking to people. Can you create like a landing place online that your business builds off of? So when we work with clients, everything is built off of a website, and from that website we have all these different packages. A lot of you guys are already clients and I'm very grateful for that. But just so you have an idea of what we would be talking about if you guys do decide to book some time with me, and I've been dropping our booking link in the chat, but Chris, if you just want to throw it in there again. How it works is that we build a website, and then we also talk about how do we build your brand presence online, right? What's happening when someone is looking you up? Do we have control over the narrative of what people are seeing when someone Googles you? I always like to use Tim Allen as an example because Tim Allen is never going to be more famous than the actor. And so, how do we build his brand presence online? We create a presence there. We have also introduced all these super cool AI marketing specialists into the platform. I always say, like, having a website with us is like having a beautiful car with an engine. Starting on our second level package, we're actually plugging self-driving software into that engine so that the car can start to drive itself. We also help with lead generation by running ads and by building SEO, both with AI and our human team. But I think all of this just comes back to all of the things that Ricardo has been talking about. What is your lens? What is your point of view? And can we make that as clear as possible as soon as someone meets you, both with how they meet you in person and also like your flagship store online? And I think that all of that stuff needs to be consistent. So if you can create a brand presence online and have that brand presence shine through both with how you present to people and how you follow up with your clients, then that is going to put you in the best place to continue to grow your business. And then one more thing on this note before I hand it back to you guys is what were you saying? Branding your luxury agent, free time to connect. There was one other piece that I wanted to say. It'll come back to me. But keep going. Chris and Ricardo, thank you so much. Again, if you guys do want to meet with me and the team, there is that link in the chat, and hopefully it comes to me. If not, it will go to someone on our team. But thank you guys for having me.
Laura, thank you so much. I am gonna just throw up while we jump into Q&A. I'm just also gonna throw up a QR code. If you've got your phone, this is a really easy way that you can book a demo with us. So feel free to scan this QR code. We'll jump back to seeing Ricardo's beautiful face here in a moment. But as we get into the Q&A. Ricardo, there's a couple of questions that I think we can address right off the bat. So the
Wait, Chris,
first
can I
one,
interrupt you really quick? I'm
oh
so
yeah, of
sorry. I know
course.
that you were about to launch. If you guys book time through that link, we are waiving our setup fees until December 10th, which is, well, no, whatever the Friday is.
12.
December 12th. Yes, thank you. If you book through that link, waiving setup fees on our pro level website. So that'll be up to a $2,500 discount. You have to book time by the end of next week in that link. Thank
Whoa,
you.
the whole setup fee, guys. That it's
The
normally
whole setup. We
I,
haven't
I
done that in almost 2 years. So
well, it's howdy doody time then. Um, guys,
Woo!
I want to jump into some questions. Ricardo, I've got a couple of questions that we can fire off here. The first one is about systems. Are you
Mhm.
using any particular type of organizational system, lead management system? What are tell us a little bit about the back end for your team. Folks want to know what you're doing about the infrastructure for operating a business like yours.
Yeah, so we are now in a again, is that going to be an odd answer because right now we are in a moment of transition and we have tested several kind of like systems. And so what we are doing right now is we're building somebody's building something for us, which is going to be a productivity and client relation and CRM tool. And so that's being right now built for us. It's AI based, so it's going to allow us to look at kind of like client behaviors in relationship um, to our production and then provide recommendations in terms of frequency of touch or or changes on touch. And so right now what we are doing we're in that kind of like transitional element. And so we have moved a lot of that into basic structures that are primarily based out of it's spreadsheets because we want to have all that in that kind of like setup so that we can transition the information into the new system. But
Hmm.
we have used in the past, you know, tools like Monday, for example, in terms of a CRM. We found it to be kind of like a helpful tool. We also piggyback into some of the systems that the company, the Coldwell Banker, uses or that provides to agents in terms of that of that management. But we
Hmm.
we are really right now on that phase of being like super basic because we are about to transition into an AI-based proprietary tool.
You called out earlier Instagram as an important portal for you and your business. Any
Yes.
thoughts on LinkedIn? Is this a
Yes.
place
LinkedIn is
where
fantastic.
you, yeah, give us a little bit insight here.
LinkedIn is great. It's a different kind of like client pool. And so what we are doing with Instagram, and I forgot to mention that was negligent on my side. So in terms of Instagram, is mostly kind of like a retail one-off luxury business mostly. But on LinkedIn, we've been very successful with the real estate developers. And so we connect with a lot of construction companies, with a lot of real estate developers, and we gotten some very good business out of that. We gotten some pretty good sized buildings throughout the years out of LinkedIn. And so yeah, two different audiences and then two different, types of business. I know I forgot to mention most of what we do here in our business. Of course, we do general brokerage, but it's mostly that intersection between new construction and luxury. That's what we do the most. And so those two tools have been pretty good at helping us hone in on those two things. Those two,
Fantastic.
yeah.
We've had I had a couple of questions here from folks who are relatively new to the business
Yes.
and would love your advice on the following. One, what can somebody who wants to break into the luxury space do to best get started? And two, is this a good time to be joining the real estate space in the luxury segment? I get the sense that there's never a good time or a bad time. It is always just the right time. But I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
All right, listen, I think that is always a good time. There is always a good time because there's always going to be opportunity. If the markets are tough, there is opportunity. If markets are good, there is opportunity. There is always opportunity. I actually do think that when markets are challenging like this one is the better time to do it because you have to figure out how to do it. You have to really put everything that you have into it. It actually gives you time to build it. Sometimes when people jump in a market that is rolling and is fun, all they're doing is transacting and they really are not learning the business or honing. What they're doing is transacting, right? And what happens with that is that it creates a business that relies on the closing as a final line and not necessarily on the closing as a starting line for it. And so what I said to people that are new in the business, this is the right market because everything that you learn is going to give you the tools to build a business like nobody else's. And so that is to me exciting. I like listen. I love what I have, but in some ways, I wish that I had the opportunity to reinvent everything because most likely will look very different. I cannot because there's so much going on. But somebody who's new in the business right now has the tremendous opportunity to build something that looks nothing like mine or anybody else's business. And that to me is pretty exciting. It's pretty, it's pretty
Mm,
amazing.
mm.
So this is if there's a time, this is the time. This is the time to do it. There's a lot of shift, there's a lot of change, there's a lot of opportunity. If you are new, most likely you are younger, which means you're much more familiar with a lot of the technology that is at play. And you just have to, again, you just have to know what your value proposition is, what is your point of view on your business, and who your client is. And once you have clarity on that, build whatever you want to build and just go for it. You have to go for it. That's the thing about it.
Ricardo,
It's gonna happen.
as we're drawing to a close here, I want to get one quick take from you on what you think the future will look like. Try to close all of these events with a future-looking prediction from our expert guests. What do you think the future of the luxury experience will look like in real estate?
Hmm. I would say that the future of luxury real estate is based on experience, that client experience as strategy. I think that we are becoming so sophisticated in terms of tools that we have at hand, and we're going to get even more and more and more sophisticated in the way in which we can handle the business and operate the business. That's going to be, I think, easier than it's ever been. But the thing that is not going to go away, and I think the thing that is going to be paramount, is that client experience. And so if you're not building your client experience as part of your business strategy, I think they're going to be left behind. And it's not technology that is going to, we keep saying, oh, agents that know AI are going to leave the agents that don't know AI behind. I don't think that's even the case. It's going to be an equalizer at some point in which those tools are the tools and we get used to them and we do them, right? But is that operationalizing your client experience as part of your business strategy, I think is the future of luxury real estate.
Mm. Ricardo Rodriguez, I couldn't have said it better myself. We're so excited that you joined us here today. Folks, if you want to keep in the loop on what Ricardo is up to, I strongly encourage you follow his Instagram. It's just a good dose of feel-good chemicals into your bloodstream too, because it's a beautiful, aesthetic,
Thank you.
experiential media feed from one of the prominent real estate experts in the United States and beyond. Ricardo, thank you so much for partnering with Luxury
Thank
Presence
you
and for
very
being our
much.
guest today.
My pleasure. And thank you to all of you who listened for an hour. I hope I didn't make you fall asleep or something like that.
Folks, if you want to learn more about what you can do as a partner here at Luxury Presence, we'd love to chat with you. I'm going to put the QR code back up on the screen. And for those of you who didn't get your question answered, I'm so sorry about that. Feel free to follow both Luxury Presence and Ricardo on Instagram. Shoot us some DMs. We'd love to chat. We'd love to help in any way that we can. And once again, everybody, thank you for joining the
Thank
Luxury
you.
Presence panel. We'll see you next time.